Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. People who have had disturbing paranormal experiences in their homes. What's your story? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This probably doesn't fall under extremely distressing, but I'll put my story down. The earliest memory I have is of an experience with an apparition. Based on what I know, I was no more than 3 years old when I saw it. Parents didn't believe me, always had some explanation for me. We moved houses and tiny things would happen here and there, but once again, my parents always chalked it up to an overactive imagination. There was a full-body apparition that both my brother and I saw as it walked past a doorway while we were home alone. Fast forward to getting married and moving into an old apartment, things start to heat up a little bit. Bins would get flipped over and the contents dumped on the floor. Things would slide off of the back of our vanity, about 18 inches deep, and fly 3 feet to hit the footboard of our bed, not gently. More activity than I had experienced before, but still not a lot. We moved into an almost brand new apartment, and while 1 or 2 things happened, things calmed down significantly. Then, we moved in with my in-laws while my husband went to school. Cue the real events. The house would go through periods of high activity, particularly centered around me. My husband would hear me calling him from another room. I wouldn't be calling him. He would see me pass by the bottom of the stairs as he was coming down and would follow me all the way around the corner into the far room only to dead end with the room empty. I came in from the chicken coop to him upset because I'd been calling him from all over the house. I'd been outside the whole time. It would make one of the dogs go absolutely feral, barking and snarling at nothing. I would have small, soft items thrown at me. I would hear clapping and walking around the house, and the dogs would go looking for what made the noise. Here's the main story. My husband was working nights, and I was home alone on the farm while the in-laws were out of state on a trip. One of the dogs goes into an episode, staring at nothing in the middle of the living room, absolutely losing it. Rabid dog. I can't get her to calm down. Usually a light touch on the back will snap her out of it, but I could not call off her this time. I finally go to my room and take a breather, and I hear her stop. Maybe 15 minutes later, she's at it again. I can't describe how terrifying it is to see her like this. Like I said, absolutely feral. I go halfway up the stairs and am talking to her through the banister, finally get her to come over to me and stop barking. She keeps looking next to me at the top of the stairs. Then a huge slam on the baby gate there happens, rattling the gate and the banister. I ignore it because I've heard that's the best thing to do when something's right next to you. The dog barks, but I get her stopped again. Then, right in my line of sight, I see a pen slide forcefully off the table, flying multiple feet before hitting the ground. The dog immediately runs to attack and goes into another fit, looking at something next to the table. I start to lose it, immediately go back downstairs to my bedroom. I sit on my bed next to my cat napping there. He stands up and comes to me since I'm upset and crying. I hear the dog move back to the barking in the living room, closer to my room. A minute later, my cat turns to look at the doorway. His back raises up, ears pinned back, and his hair stands on end looking straight at the doorway. I ran out the house at that point. That was the worst it ever got. I have lots of other little stories though. I just moved into a brand new house and, knock on wood, nothing yet. I refuse to talk about paranormal activity aloud in any home I stay in, and I think subconsciously I pushed myself to only move into a new construction for fear of stirring anything in an existing house up. With what I know about the experiences through my life compared with where I was staying, I've kind of begun to think I might be a poltergeist. A new construction home was the only place I felt safe moving into, so while my story isn't to the level of a horror movie, I'm happy to be out of old houses and apartments. So for those of you true believers out there, do you think that these type of encounters are attached more to a person, or a place, or a thing, or both? My childhood home was notoriously haunted. We moved into the house when I was around 6 and my brother was 3. It started slow, with him and I seeing weird things at night and constant nightmares. Things would go missing only to return a few days later. We would constantly hear people talking, footsteps, and doors slamming when no one was around. Over the years, this started to escalate, and there are lots of stories, so I've included a few. One parent was in their bedroom during a party when they heard a child running, and the door to their walk-in closet creaked shut. She assumed it was me or my brother and went to open up the door. When she did, some of the t-shirts that were hung close to the floor were swaying. Peeking out from behind them was a little girl she did not know. The little girl vanished before her eyes. I was home alone, waiting for my boyfriend to come over. I heard him call my name, so I came out of my bedroom and headed towards the front door. When I came to the stairs that separated my room from the front door, I saw this thing. It almost resembled a person, pitch black, crawling up the stairs. It cracked its neck to look up at me, and I ran. I called my boyfriend, and he wasn't there yet. I hid in my room until he came. The last one I'll put is after my family moved out, we rented it for a while. The tenant complained of similar things that we experienced in our first few months there. He went out of town and left his dog in the garage. His friend came to check on him, and the dog was missing. He later found the dog, who was fine, just scared, locked in the crawl space that was completely separate from the garage and 2 closed doors away from where the dog was left. This crawl space was the worst place in the house for negative activity. I wouldn't say distressing, but it's a big reason I keep my bedroom door shut while sleeping. Also a big reason I keep the lights on at night. When I was in middle school, I kept my bedroom door open one night. That night my father was out drinking or something. I say something as he was cheating on my mother at this time, so who's to say? He didn't come back by the time I went to bed. So when I heard the front door slam shut in the middle of the night, I thought, Dad's home. Then I went back to sleep, as I heard him walk up the stairs to the living room. The house I lived in, for context, had stairs right as you entered through the front door or garage door, up to the living room and down to the basement. Then more stairs when you walked up, leading to the bedrooms on the 3rd floor that were over the garage. Never heard him walk up to my parents' bedroom that was in view from my bedroom door. I felt something was watching me. I woke up slowly to see what I presumed was my father in the doorway. I squinted at him because he plays jokes like this, trying to scare me and my sisters. When I got a good look at the man in the doorway, I couldn't see any features. I went to wipe my eyes and get a better look at him. I stared at the man, and 2 white eyes stared back. I realized this wasn't my father. I didn't scream or jump back in fear. Instead, I did what any sensible person would do: cover my face and hide in my sheets. I heard the man walk over to my bed after I hid. I could feel him still staring at me. He was close enough I could hear him breathing. I just cried, hoping it was all a dream or a prank my dad was playing on me. I eventually cried myself to sleep. I woke up that morning scared out of my mind to find my father sleeping on the couch. I didn't tell anyone about what happened at that time. I didn't have the best relationship with my father, so I never approached him about it either when he woke up. However, I asked my mom when Dad got home, and she didn't know, as he never came to bed. I slept with my door closed from then on. When I would sleep on a couch or a room with no doors from that night onward, I always felt someone was watching me from the corner of the room. But as I got older, it slowly stopped happening. He now seems to come back when I drive at night. Sometimes I think I see him in my back seat or on the sidewalk, so I think whatever this is, it's still attached to me. But I've never seen him as clearly as I saw him that night he stood in my bedroom doorway. Doesn't mean to leave it like that, but nothing else has happened, nor has he shown himself the past 4 months, so it's good for the time being. TL, DR, I sleep with my doors closed. Many years ago, I had a Ford Escort I really loved. One day I noticed the back right wheel was missing a single lug nut, no biggie, replaced. Soon though, one is missing on the same wheel. I assume the thread is stripped, but the shiny new lug nut is still there, different one missing. This keeps happening, and I assume all the threads are stripped a little bit. I don't want to lose a wheel though, so I get all new studs. Go through the pain of driving the old ones out, way harder than I thought it would be, and get all new lug nuts to go with it. Before the week is out, I'm down 1 lug nut. I start checking my car every night, and then again in the morning. Yep, disappearing overnight. Not on the ground either. Aha, I have a prankster. Feeling this is annoying, but no big deal, very small town. I go sell some blood plasma a few times and then buy a big old bag of lug nuts. They keep vanishing, and I keep replacing them. But then I notice one vanishes sometimes after leaving for work and before I got home. Fallen off while driving? Weird? Coincidence? They're still occasionally vanishing overnight about once a week randomly. I start making marks in my owner's manual morning before I leave, when I arrive at work, when I leave for work, when I get home. I check their tension frequently. Occasionally one is loose. This fits the random falling off but doesn't explain overnight disappearances. Sometimes it vanishes while I'm driving, sometimes overnight, at least twice while in the parking lot at work. I'm beginning to feel very weird about it. It just doesn't add up. I keep writing stuff down as if that'll make it more sense. I carve symbols into the lug nut tops with a screwdriver to tell them apart: heart, spade, diamond, club. And it is definitely different once vanishing, not always the same location. I can't explain it. Finally, I try a dangerous experiment. I simply let it run with 3 out of 4 lug nuts. Cautiously at first, checking tension on the 3 remaining ones because I imagine the wheel falling off at highway speeds, but over time, nothing happens. I kept the car almost 2 full years after that, and my back right wheel always just ran with 3 lug nuts. The only time I had one disappear was when I got new tires and the shop put a new one on. Once it vanished though, I let things be, and it was always fine. Still no idea what the F that was. I don't know how disturbing it was really, but so odd. I'm now curious what would have happened if I had some kind of surveillance footage of the car at night. Well, clearly something didn't want you driving with all 4 lug nuts, so I'm glad everything turned out okay. So, pretty odd story. I live on the 2nd floor of a 2-story apartment built in 1912, which originally was a mansion for some of the wealthiest in my town. I've had multiple occurrences where I'd be home by myself and I'd hear whistling, short tunes, usually only 2 notes or so, but they were so effing clear and I could never figure out where it was coming from. My mom often tells me the story of when she was asleep and dreamt of an older woman who seemed to be dressed in a more old-fashioned way, slowly walk into her room and sit on her bed. When my mom woke up, she could still feel the pressure of someone sitting at the foot of her bed. When my mom sat up to go use the bathroom, she felt something slowly and gently push her back down to the bed. Eventually, my mom was able to get up out of bed, but she could never figure out what the F happened. This happened when I was 11 and visiting a lighthouse in Michigan that was supposedly haunted by a boy. My parents wanted to take a tour with the tour guide, but I wanted to play outside, considering we had been touring various sites in the Upper Peninsula that day. No one was around, so my parents ended up letting me play outside the lighthouse while they took a quick tour. As I played outside, a really beat-up ball rolled up to my feet. I bent over to pick it up, and as I stood back up, I saw a boy standing next to the edge of the lighthouse looking at me. I assumed the ball was his, so I tossed it over to him, and he wandered away. I didn't think any about it. But when my parents were done with the tour, they asked what I did. I told them something along the lines of, I was just wandering around. Oh, and I helped this kid get his ball back. The tour guide was with my parents, and when I mentioned the kid, he looked startled because, as I mentioned earlier, there was no one other than us at the lighthouse. Only 3 cars. My parents' car, the tour guide's car, and the car belonging to the person at the front desk. The tour guide asked me to take a look at a picture in the lighthouse. I know this sounds super cliche, but when he showed me the picture, it was the picture of the exact same boy with the exact same beat-up ball. Apparently that kid died at the lighthouse. On a side note, we checked around and there was no boy. So, you might be asking me, why was this creepy, especially considering that the boy never scared me or tried to scare me? What creeps me out is that I touched that ball. When it comes to ghost stories, most people only report a ghost, not other objects. Assuming that was a ghost with his ball, what the heck did I touch? Also, it felt solid like a real ball. If it was a ghost ball, then how the heck do you explain what I touched? This still bothers me to this day. We live in an approximately 150-year-old farmhouse with a cemetery across the road that hasn't seen a burial since 1870. Apparently, the records office burned down, so they lost the exact plot locations and just opened up another cemetery 300 feet west of us. About a week after moving in, my wife and I were eating dinner, and my phone, which hadn't been touched in quite a while and was sitting on the kitchen counter, says in Siri's voice, "You are in my realm," and nothing more. We both heard it clear as day, and there was no history of the phone saying it. Then my cat was absolutely relentless in getting me out of bed in the middle of the night. At first I shrugged it off, but then got thinking maybe something was on fire or whatever. She led me downstairs, nothing. I went outside to see if there was anyone out there, and it was the deadest silence I've ever heard in my life. I noped out of that and came back inside. When I went to go back upstairs, I stood in something cold and wet. I bent down to see what it was, and my feet were totally dry. It was just a very strange cold spot. When I stood up, the feeling of a hand on my shoulder was unmistakable. The cat was just staring at me intently. TV remote goes missing constantly. I think we've lost 6 now. I've had every single piece of furniture out of the TV room as I renovated the whole thing. Never found one. About a year and a half after moving in, I bumped into a former coworker at a flea market who knew where I lived but hadn't been told about any of the occurrences. She said, "Go introduce yourself to those people over there. They lived in your house in the 80s. So I did. And the first thing they asked was, "How's the ghost doing?" They said it had a fondness for messing with the TV and would open doors, sometimes at very useful times, like when carrying a bundle of firewood. And one more addition to the story, a good friend of mine, who I met after moving here, and again, never mentioned any of this stuff too, was standing in my driveway and just randomly said, "Dude, there's some strong spirit activity here. Wow." From Indonesia, where paranormal activities are quite normal here, but then I had this one disturbing experience. One day I went into my uncle's home in Geneva. He loves collecting statues of historical stuff. Then I got a duty to take out the trash that day, and I went to the basement where his office room was at. It's a small room, like a 2 by 3 meters. Then, somehow, I saw a statue of a goddess with 4 or 6 arms, and the aura in that room just suddenly cold. There were 4 rooms in the basement, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, office room, and storage room. Somehow, after I took all of the trash, I cannot find the stairs to go back. It's gone. Literally gone. I was quite panicked, and then I smelled some strange scent, like an ancient flower. I went into the office room and I spoke to the statue. "Hey, I'm sorry if I disturbed you in ways I cannot imagine. I need to go back upstairs, okay? Just let me go." Then after that, I can see the stairs again. But after that, it took me years to be able to go to any basements. My family has always seen, heard, and been around paranormal stuff. I have 2 that are final proof to me. One is distressing, and the other has so few logical explanations. Distressing first. I had a friend that would crash at my place all the time. Slept in the lounge and struggled to sleep. Never said why, just complained. My mom asked him if he's seen the lady in white, and he said pretty serious, so she is real. Apparently comes in the back door and walks down the passage towards my room or vice versa. Now, before this talk happened, my girlfriend at the time always woke me up to walk with her to the toilet to stand outside and walk back. I'm scared of the dark too, but whatever, I can do it. Now, it was my friend who asked her if she had seen the lady too, and they were talking about it. For those curious, I and my sister have seen since. We sleep on the opposite side to my mom. The proof one is in a hallway with no windows. We have a whiteboard. It's hung perfectly level, no funny business with the pen tray. South Africa has no, rarely ever earthquakes. The door is next to, but was closed on this occasion. All was still and calm. My dad and I were talking about the ghost and what we hear and think when the pen launches off the tray for the whiteboard, as if somebody casually swept their hand out from the whiteboard to the edge of the tray. So the pen flew off horizontally. No cats, and nobody was standing within a meter of it. It wasn't violent, but like you popped it off onto the floor to annoy somebody and make them pick it up. Not that I'm saying that was an intention, but the kind of trajectory it took didn't spin, so it wasn't an edge catching. There are no edges. It was just on the tray, in the middle. If I had a lover who woke up in the middle of the night and had me escort them to the bathroom, we'd have a bit of a problem. Dogs, I can understand, but person, come on. When my son was 3, he started having dreams and visions of people coming out of holes and dancing in his room. He said they were trying to tell him something. He also said he would wake up to see faces in the dark and they were screaming at him. There were many nights where his screaming would wake me up and I would run into his room. It honestly sounded like he was being attacked. One night in his room, he was telling me about one of his experiences. I saw a streak of white light move over his face. Another time I ran into his room and he was up on his knees looking around the room. I didn't say anything and just continued to watch him in the dark. This went on for about 15 minutes, and finally he looked at me and he said one word, "Manya." It was apparently his name for whatever spirit he was seeing. Another time on the baby monitor, and we heard a loud male voice say, "Stop that." We happened to know a mother and daughter psychic team and enlisted their help. They tuned in and both said they saw an evil old man spirit from the 40s who brought in other souls to make mischief. He also smoked a cigar. We often smelled cigar smoke in our hallway outside my son's bedroom. They tried cleansing the house remotely. They lived in another city. We thought all was good until one evening, we were walking into our dining room to sit down when my son went flying forward into the table. He started crying and said that someone pushed him from behind. We kept our son in our room that night, and my wife and I both heard what sounded like an old man making gagging noises from my other son's room. He was 11 months old. Our friends put together a whole team, and they came and cleansed the house. It was quite a process, and our neighbors probably thought we were real weirdos, but they got the job done. We haven't had any issues in 10 years. It was really scary.